Well, good evening. My clock says that it is 5:30 and that's the official time and we want to start on time. So welcome to our meeting and please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Item 1.3 is approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the agenda is approved. Item 1.4 is the introduction of our student board member, Ariana Brown. All right, Mr. Anderson, he's got all the scoop.
All right. Hello, Ariana. Is it Ariana? Ariana?
It is Ariana.
It is Ariana. All right. She had it right the first time. Okay, very good. I have an Ariana in my family, and so I just, very sensitive to the mispronunciation. All right. So Ariana Brown, welcome, is joining us from Elko High School. She is a junior, and she has been and is currently involved in the following organizations. She is a member of the National Honor Society. She is the vice president of FFA. She is in winter cheerleading right now, is on the speech and debate team, the renowned and high achieving speech and debate team, and is enrolled in several AP honors and dual credit courses. Ariana plans on attending Arizona State University and majoring in animal science, and then she will pursue a career in the livestock and veterinary medicine profession. Very impressive resume. Thank you so much, Ariana, for joining us here tonight. And we look forward to hearing your student voice on all things that we cover here. And thank you so much for joining us.
Perfect. Thank you guys for having me. I'm honored to be here, truly.
Well, Ariana, we're excited to have you and excited to hear your thoughts on anything that comes up. So welcome. Glad to have you. All right, we will now move to item 1.5, receive a presentation from the Sage Dojo Dusties. Sage, come on up.
When we were going. So at Sage Elementary, we have started a program this year. So we're the Dust Devils. That's our mascot. And because we're the Dust Devils, we do everything dusty. We will dust you. We do a chant. We have a dust storm. So if we have perfect attendance, students who have perfect attendance, including no tardies, no being checked out early, are able to run in a dust storm at the end of every month where we blast music through the halls and they chase our principal, Mrs. Harris, down the hallways. That's the one time they're allowed to run in the school. And so we wanted to combine our dusty theme with Dojo because Dojo is a free program that all parents can access. And it's a great way for teachers to communicate with parents. So we decided to implement a program this year where we're trying to boost positive behaviors, encourage attendance. And so we created a little video to introduce it to students, and we'll show that to you now and then talk about it for a second.
Okay.
Okay, are we back? Okay, so we've been doing this for a few months, and it's just been a great way to promote this positive behavior in our school. So we have a recess every Thursday. We kind of took this idea from something that Grammar number 2 was doing here in town. So we have a recess at the end of the day every Thursday where kids get out early, and it's kind of crazy out on the playground because we tell teachers whoever has earned the points and you feel like they deserve that recess, they can go out. So a lot of kids are outside. We have music playing, and then we have a dojo lunch at the end of every month where we decorate a room and make it kind of fancy for lunch. So we have 5 of our SAGE students here that you might recognize from the video that we just thought could tell you a little snippet about what they think about dojo. So let's have Rustin and Madsen, and then Lewis and Nayli and Charlie. Okay.
We used to do a reward for the whole class if you're good, but some kids would ruin it for the class. Now, I like this way better because we control how good or bad we are, so we control how many points we get. Each week, I want to earn all my points so that I can go to dojo recess and dojo lunch.
I earned the first dojo lunch, and it was fun because there were decorations and lights, and we got a snack. So I wanted to earn the second lunch, and I did. I want to keep earning all my points to get the dojo rewards.
Each week I try to earn dojo recess because it's super fun, and I feel like the queen of the school when I get to go out for extra recess. I was working really hard to earn dojo lunch, so I wanted to make sure to take my vitamins every day so that I would not get sick and lose an attendance point.
All right, well, Sage, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your video with us as well as your little presentation. Good luck earning those dojo dusty points. We'd love to hear a report back sometime, maybe at the end of the year, and see how it's going. All right, any comments from the board for our Sage Dojo Dusties?
Better turn that on. I was there and got to see the dust storm, and that was so much fun. Those kids looked like they were running out ready to play a Super Bowl or something, and the whole school was cheering for them and chasing Mrs. Harris's on a scooter. It was so much fun. And I was telling my boys about it, and they were like, "That's awesome. I wish we could do that."
I just think it's really clear to see the enthusiasm from all these kids that whatever you're doing, you're doing a great job. So please keep it up. Thank you.
Well done, guys.
All right, and thank you. You guys can stay for the whole meeting, or you're welcome to leave. Either whatever you want to do is just fine. Kayla, do you want a photo? Actually, please join Kayla out in the hall for a photo. And thanks again for coming. You guys can come anytime. We love to see your smiling faces here. All right, we will move on to item 1.6, recognition of the December S.T.A.R.S recipients.
All right, that's me again. So we had 3. One of them we're gonna hold off on because that person is in Wells and will be in Wells in a couple of months, so we'll recognize them while we're there. But the other 2 I'm gonna read about here, and before I get into it and forget, I wanna thank our sponsors, Leanne's Floral Designs, Maverick Gaming, the Rotary Club of Elko Desert Sunrise, and the S.T.A.R. for helping provide the swag, the goods that our recipients earn. So I will share those. First, I will go with this person is not here. Her name is Megan Cook, and she's a paraprofessional at West Wendover Elementary. And she was nominated by a parent named Ashley Rodriguez, and she said, "You should definitely choose Megan. She has taken her time with my daughter all these years and tries to teach her new ways to learn every day. She is special ed and she deserves all the recognition. If I could tell her 1,000,000 times, thank you for caring and helping my daughter, it wouldn't be enough because she's done so, with lots of O's, much for her and continues to care and help in so many ways you couldn't possibly know. I choose Megan to be recognized today, tomorrow, and every day. She is special and you should be proud to have such an amazing teacher working in your district. I loved that nomination. It was short, it was sweet. You could feel the emotion in it. And the delivery of this one was fun. We drove all the way to Wendover to do it and just happened to be during the lunchtime where Megan and the kids she works with were at lunch. And we got all the kids to attention and they all went crazy when we announced her and Megan didn't know we were coming. It was all a nice big surprise and kids hugging her and loving on her and all the staff in the room real happy for her too. So it was a really awesome experience. And Mr. Durham here was able to join us as well. It was fantastic. We loved it. So congratulations to Megan and thanks to her for all her hard work. The other one we do have here with us today, and it's Miss Melanie Myers right there. And you get to come stand up while I read this about you. So yeah. And unfortunately for you, yours is longer than a brief paragraph. So Melanie is a teacher at Southside Elementary, 4th grade. She had 2 different nominations. One of these was actually from last year, and we saved it because we get tons of nominations and we like to hold on to them. And so she got another one this year. And so with 2 nominations, she was selected. The first one, she was nominated by a parent named Desiree Lara. And she said, I would love to nominate Mrs. Myers for a S.T.A.R.S award. Mrs. Myers has had all 3 of my children and she's had my youngest twice. So you had the youngest in a early grade level and then you were first grade and then 4th grade. With that being said, each time she's been their teacher, we have always had an amazing year. She is so kind and understanding, especially when it comes to concerns academically. My oldest is deaf in his left ear, and she was always making arrangements to accommodate his needs, making sure he could hear and understand the tasks that needed done. My middle child was super excited to have her because he had already heard so many good stories from both my oldest and youngest who had already had her. It was a perfect year. My son cried his last day of school in 4th grade, walking to me because he knew he would no longer be in her class. My youngest struggles and has struggled for years with reading specifically, and Mrs. Myers makes it very easy to keep in touch and communicate my concerns. She goes beyond in trying to help my daughter and making sure she understands her work. I've never met any teacher who will literally read and help read everything given. My daughter is very behind in reading and all her scores are very low to where she's considered a non-reader, but she comprehends the material if it's read to her, and that is exactly what Mrs. Myers does. My daughter comes home not defeated because of her reading, because she has an amazing teacher. My daughter loves school, not just because of friends or recess, but because of Mrs. Myers. And that to me as a parent speaks so much for itself. I will always speak so highly of her and her work ethic because she really imprinted her kindness and teaching on my 3 kids. My kids adore her, and she is one who deserves this award. So that was the first one. Awesome paragraph. I got emotional the last time I read it, and I forgot about it, and I got emotional this time too. It's amazing. And then the one from last year, Mrs. Myers has the utmost patience and kindness for all her students. She not only is an excellent teacher, but has compassion and understanding for each and every one of her students. From every meltdown to fights, she is patient and understanding through it all. I especially appreciate the environment she creates in class for my son, who has autism, to feel less overwhelmed and overstimulated. We love Mrs. Myers. So thank you so much, Melanie, for all the amazing work you do with our students. And sounds like you've been doing amazing work for a while. And it's nice to see those parents recognize that. And thank you so much for all your contributions at Southside and to kids everywhere.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. That was very awesome.
Well, Melanie, thank you for being here. Thank you for all you do for those students. Yeah, it's kind of emotional listening to those letters that are read. So thank you for your work and thank you to Megan, and we will thank our other S.T.A.R.S recipient when we get to Wells. Just a reminder, and I guess Susan can put this plug in and she usually does, but anyone can nominate someone for the S.T.A.R.S recognition. And we love to be able to recognize our staff that are taking care of our students. It's awesome. So thank you again. All right, we'll move on to item 1.7, input from the public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public, if any. In the interest of privacy and due process, the public is requested to not raise personnel issues except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. Comments are limited to 3 consecutive minutes. A speaker's time may not be reserved, divided, apportioned, or deferred. No action may be taken upon a matter raised under this item of the agenda until the matter itself has been included specifically on an agenda as an item upon which action will be taken. I have one request for public comment from Mr. Streeter. Come on up.
Good evening. I've been asked to give a brief update on the happenings at Battleborn Youth Challenge Academy, and I'd just like to start by thanking the Board of Trustees and Superintendent Anderson for your continued support. I'm a little jealous. I had to return to Michigan and get hip replacement surgery, so I was not able to be at graduation, but I understand a couple of board members were there to support us and get to experience that. I think that's wonderful. We last Saturday had our 0 day where all the new cadets come in and get their in processing. We were a little nervous with the impending weather, but it was very successful. We got all but 2 students in, and those 2 will be arriving, 1 tonight and 1 tomorrow morning. So our total for this cycle will be 59 cadets, which is just amazing. But that's not it. And here comes the shameless plug. I was recently in Michigan, and while I was home, I got to watch the University of Michigan win the national championship. And finally, my Detroit Lions won a football game in the playoffs. And the excitement is really building there, just like it's building at Battleborn Youth Challenge Academy. We have begun discussions on how to expand the program. We are very confident that we will have 100 cadets for our next cycle. So I just wanted to let everybody know so that you remember Battleborn Youth Challenge Academy. And if I miss you with the bumper sticker, I'll catch you after the meeting. Thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Streeter. Does anyone else wish to make a comment at this time? All right, seeing none, we will move on to item 2.1. And I'm not going to read all of this, but it is the reorganization of the board. And this is a fantastic meeting because we have opportunity for some change on the board. And since I have been sitting here for a long time, I will just say I am so fortunate to sit here with 6 other individuals that it doesn't matter where they serve on our board, they do an amazing job. So with that being said, we will start with the president, and we will just ask for nominations. By Robert's Rules of Orders, nominations do not require a second. So if you have a nomination, we will ask for nominations for each office, and then we will have discussion if needed, and we will go ahead and vote on each office before we move to the next one. Is there anyone that has questions about the procedure? All right, well, we will start with nominations for the president.
I'd like to start there. I know that a lot of, a few of you that I've talked to on the board have all been interested in leadership. And, but I first want to take the time to thank you, President Dastrup, for your service, for getting this board through arguably the darkest time it's ever seen, you know, and coming out and getting us to where we are right now. It's just been nothing short of amazing. I really, really appreciate you. And again, appreciate you for choosing me, you know, in the very beginning, and my colleagues here. I felt like you've built a great team here, and you've done an amazing job.
Thank you.
Several of us are interested in leadership. And I think one person has really kind of set themselves apart with their preparation and with their the types of questions they've asked and just the dedication to the job. And so I want to nominate Matt McCarty as our board president moving forward. I'd like to see to where we kind of rotate through those that want to have that opportunity to serve can do so. But I feel like this year, you know, in the past year, Matt really has set himself apart as with, you all know the work that he's done and the questions that he's asked and how prepared he is. I think we would be in good hands going forward. So that would be my nomination.
All right, thank you. Are there any other nominations?
Can I nominate Teresa again for this year? I think last year she's been great. She's been a lot of help for me, and I think the way that she play, like, I don't know, plays or discuss and lets everyone their time in for discussion. And I think she's been great. So I want to nominate her.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for president? All right, seeing none, we will proceed to vote. And we will start with all in favor of Matt. Please say aye. Actually, I guess we probably better do a raise of hands. It might be a little hard.
Yeah.
So let's go with a raise of hands. All in favor of Matt, please raise your hand. Excellent. Matt, congratulations. All right.
I just want to say
Fantastic.
really quick that I completely agree with Jeff, that I think you've done a tremendous job.
Thank you.
And I am in favor of change only because it facilitates growth. And I think that is a really good thing and something that our board could benefit from. So
Absolutely.
thank you, Teresa. for
Yeah,
everything.
you're welcome. Well, like I said, I'm thrilled to be sitting here with all of you. So like I say, it doesn't matter who sits in what position or does what. You guys are all amazing. And I'm so glad you're here. I've said that over and over, but I'm so glad you're here. All right, let's move to B on the list for clerk. Any nominations for clerk?
I nominate Susan. I think Susan would be fabulous at clerk. I don't know if it's something that she's wanting, but yeah, I think she'd do a good job.
All right, and I did fail to say that you can choose not to accept a nomination if you don't want to. Susan kind of gave me that look and I was like, well, I'm not telling you to turn it down, Susan. I'm saying if someone nominates you and you're like, that's probably not my spot, it's okay to say that's probably not my spot. But you can also accept a nomination. I didn't ask Matt or I if we were going to accept because we know both of us would be like, sure, we got it. Okay. All right. So I've got Susan. Susan, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have other nominations for clerk?
Susan, I think that you would also do a good job. And I'm a bit torn on, again, like what Jeff said, I know there are a number of us that are interested in different leadership positions. And I think once we get through this, that may be an opportunity to also review policy BCA. It's currently annual, but maybe making it semi-annual after this. So at the next time that we vote, because it's also a very quick changeover. And once you get kind of used to what you're doing, we're shuffling again. And so yeah, Susan, I think that you would do a good job. I'd also had visited with both Josh and Jeff on potential opportunities if they were interested in that as well. And I think Jeff has done an amazing job as NSBA. I know I'm jumping a little bit ahead. Our NSBA director, I think that he's done a really good job on that. And so I think I'm going to nominate him as director moving forward, and I'll throw Josh's name out there as well for clerk.
Josh, do you accept?
Yes.
Okay. So far, we have 2 nominations for clerk. Are there other nominations? All right. If not, I guess I could be real official and say nominations are now closed. We'll move on, but we'll just move along. All right. All in favor of Susan, please raise your hand. All right. All in favor of Josh, please raise your hand.
Vote for ourselves.
Yeah.
Please.
Yes.
Because I would feel really awkward if I didn't. I was supposed to, because I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Susan, you should always vote for yourself.
Okay.
Yes, unless you're like, please, someone else do this, and then you vote for the other person. That's great.
So I'll go back and
All
vote
right.
for myself. Okay.
Okay, well, it looks like it is 4-7, so congratulations, Josh. Welcome to being the clerk of the board. All right, we will move to the representatives to the Debt Management Commission. The floor is open for nominations.
I'm going to do a slight breach of decorum here. The Debt Management Commission meets twice a year. And in the past, I think, year and a half, I've attended 3. I'm happy to continue in that regard. However, I'm very happy also to yield if somebody else is interested in that position.
All right, well, I will take nominations or volunteers. That's also possible.
I have a question really quick. Would it be beneficial for you to stay in that spot because you have some information and some background knowledge on that, or not?
I'll be honest in that because it's only twice a year, there's a little bit of preparation right before, but otherwise, I don't think that continuity issue here there's not a loss of institutional knowledge, so to speak, with a changeover on this one. The clerk of the Debt Management Commission does a pretty good job of sending the information out, reading it through. And if somebody else is interested, then I'm happy to, give them a little bit of guidance or, anything that I may have gleaned. But I don't think this is one that is like, well, that's a big loss if we lose institutional knowledge on that one. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, do we have any nominations for debt management?
I was going to nominate Jeff. I think he'd be great in that spot too, so.
Jeff, do you accept?
I'd be happy to serve.
Okay.
And kind of sticking with my theme of change, but it doesn't have to.
All right, is there any?
I think I could definitely handle the 2 meetings a year, and I am interested in going forward with how some of this is working. Both locally too. I've had some discussions locally with the city government regarding debt management commission too. So definitely am curious.
Okay.
I'd love to.
All right, do we have any other nominations or volunteers? If not, nominations are closed and we will still vote. All in favor of appointing Jeff to that position, please raise your hand. All right, congratulations, Jeff. All right, nominations for the NSBA director. And I'm going to just point out, it asks for a legislative liaison, a director, and an alternate director. Where it is a non-legislative year, I don't think we need to separate the legislative liaison and the director. On a legislative year, I think that can be very beneficial, but I think in a non-legislative year, we can do that as one, if you guys are all right with that. So we would appoint one director and one alternate director.
That would be my suggestion. Yeah, the legislative doesn't really do much at all this year.
Yeah.
So that's something I'd be happy to continue on unless someone else does like, but I do enjoy the travel. I'm able to get out of, I have that flexible schedule to be able to make, I have a perfect record on these meetings. So.
All right. Do we have a nomination? I mean, Jeff just volunteered. So
My previous
we've got a nomination.
Does stand, especially considering the volunteerism there. And I know that that does not kind of go with Brooke's theme of change, but this is one that I think that institutional knowledge is important. So considering that Jeff is interested in staying there, then I would like to nominate Jeff.
All right. Do we have any other nominations or volunteers for NSBA?
Someday I would love to do that, but this is not the year for me to be able to do that.
Well, there's always the alternate too.
No.
Yeah.
All right. Well, say I will throw my hat in on this one because I actually serve as the liaison for all of the rural communities. So I also attend all the meetings as well. And so I would go for, the being there or being the alternate, either one. Is there anyone else who would like to, or any other nominations for NSBA? All right. Well, like I say, Jeff, I'm happy to be the alternate if you want to continue as the director.
Sure.
I will vote. All in favor of Jeff, go ahead and raise your hand. All right. All in favor of Teresa as the alternate? All right. That's easy. We like that. All right. Let's move on to the Superintendent's Advisory Committee. We need 2 plus an alternate.
When is this one meeting?
If there's ever a cause or need to convene the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, then 2 of the members of that committee would consist of board members. And for everyone's just a reminder, that committee convenes when anything that is referred to as a second order change is being proposed to be made in the district. So anything pretty massive, like when we switched from 5-day to 4-day. That's the only time we've convened that committee since I've taken over. So it's usually something a pretty significant change to the way we do things.
So then it's a special, I mean, it's a special meeting, if you will.
Yep. Had one in the 2 years I've done this. Yep.
Currently, Susan and I are on that committee, but I think there's no reason to keep us the same on there. I think that it can easily be switched up also, changed up.
I mean, I'll volunteer to be on.
And I'd like to nominate Adriana as well.
Adriana, do you accept? Josh volunteered, so. All right. So we need 2 + 1 alternate.
I'd be happy to be the alternate.
Jeff? All right. Is there anyone else that would like to serve there? All right. If Josh and Adriana are all right with it, we will vote for you as the committee members and Jeff as alternate. Can we just do that all in one vote? Everybody in favor of that particular ticket, raise your hand. All right, looks good. All right, next is our S.T.A.R.S committee. Do we have any nominations for S.T.A.R.S?
Brooke, I like your thing of change, but definitely I would nominate Susan. I think that she has taken this and really run with it. I think that she has done an amazing job recognizing our staff and how important they are. Does a good job of also recognizing the sponsors when that is sometimes overlooked. And I appreciate how much she has run with this. I don't want to pigeonhole you into this position, but I think you do an amazing job on this as well. So I hope that you'll accept the nomination.
Though not needed, I would second.
I'm gonna say that.
Same. So Susan, do you accept? Yes. All right. Are there any other nominations for S.T.A.R.S? All right, all in favor of Susan? All right. And Susan, thank you for all you've done there. You've done an amazing job. All right, the next is Emergency Operations Committee member.
I'm currently part of that. I would love to continue unless someone else would like to take.
Sounds like a good volunteer. Thank you, Josh. Any other nominations or volunteers? People are just looking at their stuff. Josh, I think you're it. All in favor of Josh, please raise your hand. All right, Josh, thank you. Next, we have the Financial Oversight Committee.
I'm currently on that committee and I would really love to stay on that committee.
Okay, thank you for volunteering, Brooke. Any other volunteers or nominations?
Thank you, Brooke, because I was going to nominate you to continue there. So I'm glad you volunteered. I'm glad you're liking it.
All right, fantastic. All in favor of Brooke? Want to make this very official. Brooke, congratulations. And our last one is the Capital Funding Committee member.
So quick question, Susan and I were both on the Financial Oversight Committee. And Adriana also. So are we just doing ones for that this time?
Oh,
I can do it again this year.
I say it. If we can do 2, I think that's a good thing, and 2 and an alternate. Is that how it was last year?
No,
Or did
it
we
was
have 3?
Yeah, it was 3
It
because
was 3 all the time.
we all went to the meetings
Mhm.
all the time.
All right. Well then, congratulations, Brooke, and we will take 2 other nominations and or volunteers.
I can do it this year.
Okay. So Adriana, anyone else?
Susan, are you interested in staying there?
I can, but if we don't need 3 people, I'm fine not doing it too.
I don't think it necessarily has to have 3. I think we just had 3. We didn't want to have quorum, so we didn't have 4, but we also, with, ultra microscope on our finances in the last year or so, I think if I recall from a year ago, it was like, hey, and especially since we had new board members who were less than familiar with school finance, it was like, yeah, let's get them in there. And so if we're happy to have 3, we can't have more than that, but we're happy to have 2, 3, whatever the board wants to do with that.
I'd also like to add, you guys all did that Georgetown University finance stuff, so I feel like you're very well equipped to continue.
I'd love to see Susan
On.
stay on that committee, but I don't know how busy is being clerk. Oh, well, actually, I guess.
I'm not.
No,
so-
you're not.
Yeah,
So,
I'm fine with being on it.
yeah, because I think Susan has a lot of good knowledge that'll be helpful on that committee. That's right.
And Susan, you said you're good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll take a vote from the board to keep, well, we already voted for Brooke, but Adriana and Susan on that committee, all in favor? All right, fantastic. And our final one is the Capital Funding Committee. Any nominations there?
Who's currently on that?
I'm
sorry?
currently on that, and that's another one. I'm a proponent of change, but I would like to stay on that committee. It's just recently been put together and we've had a few meetings, and I feel like not having change in that for a little while at least would be a good thing.
I nominate Brooke.
Okay, any other nominations? Oh, Brooke, do you accept? I mean, I don't have to ask. You just said you'd like to stay. All right, any other nominations? All right, all in favor of Brooke staying on the Capital Funding Committee, please raise your hand. All right, congratulations, Brooke. And that's all we have for item 2.1. Congratulations to everyone. We're going to have an amazing year. Looking forward to it. Item 2.2 is receipt, review, and possible acceptance of the bids for the FY24 pickup truck purchase. This is for possible action. Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Canning. He's on his way up.
All right.
I guess I will say, this was, we received your permission to go out to bid for this. We got proposals back at our special meeting back in December. This was on the agenda, but I goofed up and we put for buses on the agenda item, but the original plan was to get buses and trucks. We have the bids for the trucks. We'd like to get the trucks, but I messed up on the wording of the item. So we couldn't take any action. My apologies again, but here we are very specifically asking about the trucks. So if you have any questions about the trucks or anything else associated, Mr. Canning can help you out.
Yeah, there was some little confusion or the demand started bid. We're asking for 3 units, and I think they did an individual price, but it's just same price times 3. So.
All right, any questions from the board?
Seth, I apologize for not getting this in advance, and I hope you have that answer off the cuff. There's an alternate bid. There's about a $12,000 difference between the full bid and the alternate bid. What's the difference?
The utility body for the truck.
Okay.
So you can either purchase the truck without it or with including it. And the 3 we'd like to put in place, we want utility bodies on. So.
Great, thank you.
Are these, what are we doing currently to fill these needs?
Currently, right now, so one of the trucks was one of our service trucks at transportation. We usually have 2. So if we have breakdowns, which always seems to happen when you send one truck out and then somebody else needs to go somewhere else. We gave one of those trucks to central office maintenance because one of their trucks went down with the transmission issue. So one of them would currently come to us as for our transportation service vehicle. Then our other plan is to replace 2 of the central office maintenance crews, one of the plumber's vehicle and then the carpenter one with the utility beds. And we take their current trucks, which are non-utility beds, put snow plows on them. One is slated to go to Mountain View, which currently just has a 2-wheel drive truck and no plow. And then the other one would be either Elko High School or Flagview, who is running a 2-wheel drive truck, and then they have a Suburban with a plow. My long-term goal here is to take 2 vehicles and reduce that to 1. And that's what I've been doing throughout the year. So far, I've managed to, I think, get rid of 4 or 5 of that had that situation where they were using 2 vehicles that can easily be serviced by 1 vehicle. So that's what we're trying to do, is slim down this fleet and make it more, more cost effective to have 1 vehicle that can do both jobs instead of having 1 vehicle sit there that only runs during the winter time a few times. And we end up putting batteries in them every year and doing this. And we're spending a lot of money for a vehicle that just sits there when the maintenance superintendent and the maintenance staff can use that truck year round and take the plow off and put it on when it snows and go plow snow. So that's our end goal there, is to slowly develop all the school to where they have a 4-wheel drive truck. Currently we have like 39 trucks in the district. And about, I think, I didn't write it down, sorry. I think 20 something of those are 2-wheel drive. And most of them are, let's see, we've got Well, 1986 to 1990, we got 5 trucks. 91 to 95, we have 1, and then 96 to 2000, we have 12. And then it kind of goes up like 4 and 5 every 4 years from there. But as you can see, we get quite a long use out of our vehicles. So basically I'm wanting to phase out those 86 to 90s and then start working on that 96 to 2000 range and get those out of the fleet so we don't have huge repair costs and hard to get parts for these older ones nowadays. So
One of my concerns, just in general, not that we don't need trucks, but that we're in a budget situation where every dollar counts.
Yep.
And this is a lot of money. This is close to $200,000.
Yeah, 185, 473, 92.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering if we can put this off for a year, if it will be okay, or if we're.
Well, we could, it's part of that money that we're
I'm-
trying to spend to get to that biennium to get the reimbursement out of our transportation vehicles for buses and support. So that's why we budgeted the 1.25 at the beginning. We currently have that open PO for the buses is 895,000. And then we'd basically end up with what we've already purchased for the Expedition and the other car. We'd end up with 50,000 left in the vehicles that we have not spent out of that 1.25 that we budgeted for vehicles.
Is there anticipation to spend that 50,000?
We don't have to, no. I mean, there's still other vehicles that need to be replaced, but we can go either way on that. And the current part of the reason why we're so far behind on the trucks is normally we don't go out to bid and try to buy 3 at once. We usually buy 1, and we don't have to go out to bid because we don't hit that, but it's been the lack of availability of pickups over the past couple of years. And I don't see the point in spending more than a new one on a used one or paying the exorbitant price because they have one sitting there. So
I can testify to trucks. I bought one last year too.
Yeah. And you understand.
But
Yeah.
it wasn't $68,000 either.
Yeah. Yeah. So the truck is 49 and then the service bodies are 12,000. Yeah. Yeah.
Ariana, do you have a question or comment?
I do. So in this, it says that 2 of them would be used as snow plows and 1 would be used as a transportation department service truck. Could you elaborate on what the specific transportation department service truck would be used for?
That's for the event of when we have breakdowns on the buses, when they're on the side of the road, that's where we go rescue them. So
And do we currently have any trucks like that already?
yeah, we have 1. We normally have 2.
So do you think this kind of goes off what he had already said? If we are within a budget here, could we maybe prioritize getting 2 right now for the snow plows or even 1 plow and 1 service truck and then wait and hold off on another for next year? That way we're still getting some and we aren't going crazy in the budget. That way we're able to.
Yeah. I mean, we could, if there's any option, we could get 1, we could get 2. It's just that we've slated to spend that money so we can get the reimbursement from the state
Right.
later on.
And then
the
just-
less we spend, the less we can file for reimbursement when they look back at our.
Right.
previous
And
year.
then just to make sure I'm on the right page, the $61,824.64 is each truck, correct?
Correct.
And then what year, make and model are those trucks?
They would be 2024. And they're F-250. Ford is the one who gave us the bid.
Correct.
For the.
Thank
the
you.
lowest bid. Yep.
Any other questions from the board?
Do we already have the plows, Seth? Are we going to rearrange plows or do we need to purchase the plows for the trucks as
No, I'd
well?
have to purchase plows, additional. We've already pretty much used every plow we have. And then those 2 trucks don't have plows on them and we're in need of more. Yeah, we've had several schools reach out. Matter of fact, Mountain View asked if they needed to have somebody here to beg you guys for a plow truck, but I told them it wasn't necessary, but they did offer that. So They're in desperate want of a plow truck, yes.
So what does happen
Indeed.
with Mountain View? Do they just wait until one of the other schools is plowed, or do we
They
have
have a,
district truck
basically,
that-
they go at it with a little four-wheeler and, yeah, wait until somebody else can either come help them or borrow. But you know how that is when you have, Stephen can probably speak to some of the needs of the schools better than I could.
everybody's out with a shovel?
Evening, everyone. This was gonna be part of my construction and operations update, but huge shout out to all the schools. If anybody was driving around this weekend on Saturday, Sunday, or even the holiday, those schools that don't have plows are using four-wheelers or a tractor that might have a 3-foot bucket on it. So at 4 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning, those building soups and custodians are at those schools plowing those parking lots, playground areas. And it's not necessarily just thinking about the plows, you know, plowing snow, but it's a safety issue too. So slip, trips and falls, things like that. And Mountain View actually doesn't have the plow. We gave that one to Northside. And currently we try to, you know, facilitate getting somebody at the school in those early hours and getting one school done and the next one. But by the time our teachers show up, those parking lots are filled. And, you know, if we don't get on it right away, it turns into ice. So if anybody does go up to Mountain View, those custodians were there on the holiday on Monday, trying to plow with their four-wheeler. Same with Northside, other areas. It's a huge need and it would help the building supervisors and custodians immensely. So as far as plows go, that's a huge concern that the school district has right now.
Is there?
Go ahead, Brooke.
I'd like to just talk about Seth's mention on how it's been really hard to get trucks lately. And I know our business has, in the last few years, needed several trucks and we've had to make do with way fewer crew trucks than we needed because we couldn't get them.
Yep.
And constant phone calls and waiting 9 months to a year to finally get the truck because it's built, but it's sitting at the factory waiting for a chip. It's been a major issue. So I think if they're available and we have a need to spend the money so that we can be reimbursed later, we need to show that we are spending this on transportation so that that can be part of our budget later. I think it's wise to buy these.
And to that point, I want to make sure we're not talking about this as if we're spending outside of our budget. Like this was money that was budgeted for this purpose. And as is, we're currently coming in under budget by $50,000. And we know that in the long run, we need to have the state recognize the need. So we are within budget. So make sure that's part of the conversation.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the board?
Just one more quick question or a quick comment. Thank you for the memo. I appreciate that it laid out why we're using them, where they're going. We asked some clarifying questions, but also that it was in the budget. So I appreciate the why and the budget being on there as well. So thank you.
And I think it's important, you know, as has been noted, that we do need to have the state be able to look and say, oh, these are transportation needs, because that's been a real detriment to our district to not be able to show that. So for that, I'm going to say I'm in favor of this motion as is, but I will ask for any other questions before I ask for a motion. All right, do we have a motion for item 2.2?
Move to approve item 2.2.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Thanks, Seth. Item 2 and also thank you for coming up and clarifying for us as well. Okay, item 2.3 is receive, review, and possible approval of proposed changes to policy IKF graduation dates for schools. This is for possible action.
Yeah, it feels like quite a while ago we discussed this one, but this is the second reading of this one in this iteration. At the first reading, there were, say, 3 or 4 recommendations for changes, and all of those are reflected in the newest version. Policy IKF, which would determine when schools can elect to hold their graduation date. So Those changes being that a school can elect to hold graduation up to 1 day before the last day of instruction and up to 2 days following the final day of instruction. And then should there be such an outcry from a certain school or part of the community that is unhappy with the decision, it is possible for this to come before the board to override the decision of, in that case, it would be I guess it would be me, because the principal would schedule that. I would approve the principal's date, and then you could potentially override my decision on that. Obviously, in order for that to occur on an agenda, the board president would have to want that to be on the agenda. So people could request it of you as board members. You as board members could request the president to put it on the agenda, and that's how it would get there. So yeah, those are all the changes.
All right, any discussion on this item?
Mr. Anderson, something that just popped into my head. What happens on snow days? So we have a few snow days or a couple snow days already built in that if we need to extend, we can. Does that mean that this extends that last day, how's it phrased in here, final day of instruction? So if we say, yep, graduation's here, and everybody makes plans, and then we get hit with a blizzard every other week and we have to extend, does that push these graduations even though we've already set a graduation date?
Policy does say the final day of instruction. So
and the final day of instruction,
have additional days of instruction, then I think according to policy that would be the case. However, I will say that last year was, to my understanding, probably the most snow days and 2-hour delays that our district has experienced either ever or as long as people can remember. And we still had 2 to 3 spare days of minutes to work with. And so I think it would be rather drastic. We'd have to cross that bridge, I guess, when we get there. But I think it would be, there's more than a couple days built. You said a couple or a few, there's probably a good 7 to 8. A lot of people, when we made maybe I'm not gonna say a lot of people, some suggested that we should, when we move to 4-day, well, our days are really long, we should shave minutes off of the school day. Number one, that was problematic, I think, because our kids need instruction. But number two, in the background of that was, if we don't leave ourselves wiggle room, then we find ourselves always having to make things up at the end of the year. And so we have plenty of that built in. We have extra minutes, and it would take a lot to get to that point.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other discussion?
I would just say that last sentence could cover that contingency anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, move to approve IKF policy.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Item 2.4 is receipt, review, and discuss 4-day school week follow-up evaluation to determine effectiveness of services recommended by the Superintendent's Advisory Committee at the time of implementation, and all possible actions related thereto, including but not limited to cessation of said services. This is for possible action. Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, so I have to first quasi apologize, but not really. I mean, in letter, I'm going to apologize for not meeting a request of the board. When the 4-day was approved, or the motion to move to a 4-day was approved, part of that motion was to review in December the data of how things were going. There wasn't enough data, and we just had that one meeting. So it basically would have just been from October and November, and that's not much to talk about. So
and to clarify, I apologize. I think in the motion it was December of 24, because I wanted to make sure we had enough time to be able to look at that. And it was the last time, provided there were no resignations from the board, that the 7 of us would still be here pending the outcome of the election this year. That was the purpose behind that. If I wasn't clear on that, then I apologize, but that was the intent, if that helps you any.
Perfect. Well, haven't lost any sleep over it, so we're good to go. So what then I guess this is just an update and you guys can do whatever you want with it, but I want to make sure you know what's going on. So just as a reminder, I know you all know this, but this is for everybody. When we made the move to 4-day, there were certain stipulations or areas of need that we wanted to potentially be able to address to make sure that we were not being injurious to certain people because of our decision. And so two of those major things are we're having food service options on Fridays and having tutoring options available on Fridays. And so attached to the agenda and it was attached, late in the game. We had to collect all those numbers, but I'm going to share them here. Really hoping this button works. But I want to show you those numbers. Push the button. Is it gonna go? It turned red. It's not a good sign. I do this.
Red is good. Hold on.
Oh, red is good. Now I'm mirroring it. Okay. You say red is good, but I don't see anything. While he's sorting that out, Friday food service options were made available at one school in each community. We were trying to make food available, but also financially reasonable. And that's pretty small, but I'll talk about the numbers. You can pull it up on your screen if you have it in front of you. But what we have here is we've broken it down for both the Friday tutoring and the lunch enrichment numbers. So this first part is the tutoring, so elementary, secondary, and combined. So this is very specifically just kids being invited to come get extra educational tutoring on Fridays for those who need it for whatever reason. So it goes down by school and we have it broken up. So you have your student population, how many tutoring sessions have occurred over this school year at that school, what their total attendance was, and then it breaks it down to an average number of students and what % of that student population represents, then the instructional expense. So for the elementary schools, with one exception, we were getting 1 to 2% of the student population that was coming to those. And you can see the per pupil expense varies greatly. Sometimes, as cheap as $3 per student, but also up to $36 per student during that time. And this is assuming that schools coded where these expenses were going properly. We gave them specific budget codes so we could track that. If a school entered that as in a different budget code, then we would have no way of tracking that right off the bat. So that was elementary schools across our district. At the secondary schools, so that's all our middle and high schools, we're looking at zeros, 0.02, and our best being 2%. So we are missing Spring Creek Middle. Paul tells me that number is probably it's going to be higher than those other ones, but I was unable to get those numbers in before we attached the item. Well, it's not a live document. This is if you want to tell me what the % is, we'll take that right now.
It's 15%.
15% of their students, has participated or on average participated? So 15% of their students have. Spring Creek Middle had some secret sauce there for how they did it. Our combined schools, Jackpot had 10% of their kids participate. And the others, we had a couple at 0 and another at 1%. Then when you go so that is all just tutoring. Then separate from tutoring, there was, because that could happen at every campus. The lunch with enrichment was only at 7 campuses, like I said, 1 in each community. So we have student population for that whole community, how many lunch sessions offered, what the total attendance was, and then again, how many students per session on average, and what % of the population of that community on average. So we have anywhere from 0.1%, or actually we have some zero, and then up to 5% in jackpot. So those are the numbers of people and percentages that have taken advantage of the opportunity up to this point. The following note is from our friends at SFE, who have been shouldering a lot of the burden with food. And just George wanted to share with us that they have served during this time 855 meals. That's an average of 77 per week. They've spent over 6,000 on food, just on the food part, which is $712 per meal for food costs, and another 4,201 on labor. That's $491 per meal for labor. That's a total of $12.03 per meal for food and labor. And we normally spend about $1 per meal. So we are overspending by about $11 per meal. Because however, if it's 2 kids that show up or 50 kids that show up, you got to have the employees there during that time and the cost of the food and be ready for people. So I know at the beginning it was like, hey, we don't know how many are coming. Then as you have more and more sessions, you get a better idea and they start to adapt to those numbers. But it's always you know, your best guess as to who's coming and that sort of thing. So those are the numbers up to this point for both tutoring and lunch with enrichment at all of our schools.
So, Mr. Anderson, do you know how many of those would be like a teacher came to be there to do the tutoring, but they also brought their child, so their child came for tutoring? Do you have those kinds of numbers so that we know?
Yeah, I don't have that on this spreadsheet. We do have that tracked elsewhere. This was already a pretty cumbersome, like too big to even really properly see here. But yeah, I could probably pretty quickly.
Well, is it a reasonable percentage, like, you know, half of the students that show up
I
come
think
with a teacher?
It's more than you would like it to be. Yeah, if 9 or 10 kids were there, 3 or 4 of them were the kids of the people serving the food or doing the instruction. There were also times when it was like, hey, we're serving meals and there's a kids basketball team is practicing in the gym, and hey, come on over and get some food too, kind of thing. So some of those numbers are, I don't want to say inflated necessarily, but I mean, you could consider that. Either way, kids are getting fed, right? Like it's, if people need to eat, then they need to eat. But some of those were kind of more circumstantial than an actual desire to go get fed.
All right, questions from the board on this item?
Are we pivoting at all right now, or are we waiting? Because what this is 5 months, 6 months? How many months?
So in the Elko Spring Creek schools, we started immediately in September, and then at the outlying schools, the other 5 communities, those all started in October. And so it's for some of the schools, September, October, November, December, it's been 4 months, and for some of them 3 months. But the numbers largely have, like after the first 1 or 2, they've all kind of leveled out for the most part. Is that pretty accurate, Candace? Yeah.
So then are we waiting then? Is there a wait time where we have to wait, or can we pivot in order to do?
I think that's a conversation for all of you guys. Yep.
Oh, and that's what we're gonna.
Yeah. So I didn't come here today to convince you to do anything. I wanted to have an agenda item that allowed you to do whatever you want to do. If you want to keep doing it for another quarter, the rest of the school year, or we're done today. Like it's all up to you what we do with it. I'm reporting back on our efforts to meet your request for us to meet those needs.
Has there been any feedback of reasons why people aren't going? Like, is the time inconvenient? They just don't want to? Like, have you heard anything along those lines?
I haven't. I know that people have different reasons. I've heard some people say, well, in Spring Creek, it's available at Sage, for example. If you live, I mean, anywhere other than just the neighborhoods right there surrounding that, then it could be inconvenient to drive there. That's something I've heard. I think just when you have a lot of people who wanted Fridays off, they want Fridays off.
Mhm.
They're not planning on going to the school on Friday.
Okay, I was just curious
Yeah.
if that was part of it, you know, like you said, people can't get there or,
No.
because
yeah,
to
I
me,
mean,
it looks like people aren't interested in this, with the exception of maybe Sage, I mean, a few,
Yeah,
but
some people here and
overall,
there.
it just looks like we don't need it or we don't feel it's necessary at this time.
And I'll also say that there could be that needs are being met otherwise. So because we have a really good partnership with communities and schools, at a lot of those schools, especially the ones that maybe those needs are higher represented, and community and schools does give. Even well before we did this, they gave food bags for the weekend to lots of families, and so that need and they now have expanded that amount of food to account for an extra day over the weekend. So a lot of those families are still getting that need met by another community partner, and it's worth mentioning that in a recent meeting I was in, we had a good conversation about how it doesn't all have to be on the schools to meet every need of every kid. These aren't necessarily the Elko County School District's kids. These are the community's kids. And so if there's another way that we can meet those needs, whether it's through communities and schools or something else, then it's really great that those options exist. And if that needs being met, which the data doesn't necessarily indicate it's being met, but it also doesn't indicate that there's a need. Yeah, trying to interpret it the best we can with what information we have.
And will you remind me, did the Boys and Girls Club offer tutoring on Fridays? Or they were going to, or am I thinking of something else?
I don't know if it's tutoring specifically, but I know the Boys and Girls Club does have.
But they would do it while the kids are there. Sorry, they would work with them.
Yeah. If kids are there, I think they're having. I don't know for sure
And then
everything they're
there's
doing programmatically.
Nevada Outdoor School does something on Friday, so there's some community
stuff to do.
involvement of trying to
Yep.
find things.
We also have paper for tutoring as well.
Yeah, we have paper.
Yeah, we're meeting that need that way.
So question then, so the 10K that they broke down, we're absorbing that 100%, right? That's us. We're not being reimbursed for those.
Yeah,
'cause
no,
it's on a
that's
Friday.
all coming out of our it's our general. I don't see Cassie. Oh no, she's there. I think it's all coming out of our general
10K in
fund.
4 months.
In 4 months, yeah.
So I had a question. When we are looking at the tutoring and the instructional expenses, why is it so much more expensive for one school versus another school, even when they have like so many less participants? For instance, I believe Northside, it's $734 or $36.70 per person. Whereas other schools, it's $299 per student.
Yeah, so that's just breaking it down by how much money was expended based on how many kids showed up. So in the case of Northside, for example, they only had 3 kids on average, 20 kids total. So if now as far as the instructional expense goes, that could be based on the program they're offering and how many staff they had available. That's another element of this. Your question prompted me to remember this is some of these schools have had different challenges in getting this whole thing off the ground at a smaller school like a Northside, or let's go with one of our combined schools. Your staff base is a lot smaller, and so the number of people that are willing to come in on a Friday and work could be different than somewhere else. We had some schools where a principal would be like, "I'm struggling to find 2 people a week," and other schools they're like, "I got too many, and I can't give them all turns," and so it could just depend on the way they're offering the programs and how much it's costing them and how many kids are actually coming, because that's in the end what determines.
And then another question, just to piggyback right off of that. So with like Honor Society, we go and any day, like there's typically 2 or 3 kids like that go to Southside and we help tutor the kids. Is that something that we like as the Honor Society could look into reaching other schools in order to bring that cost down, or in case there wasn't enough staff to help tutor? Is that something that us students would be able to work for, or is that only something we'd be able to partner with Southside?
No, that could be partnered with any school. I don't think we could have the responsibility solely on students. It would still require us to have adults there for supervision purposes. I think what you're talking about is kids going on regular school days to help tutor, or are you talking about on Fridays?
I believe there have been some on Fridays. I could be incorrect there. I'm not
Okay.
sure. I know I usually just do it during the school days because
Yeah.
I want my days off too.
Mhm.
But that could be something because we all in Honor Society are looking for community service hours, and that is one major way that all of us kids get that.
Yeah, that would be an
fantastic
option.
idea.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea, and something that our schools could partner with the
Isn't
National
it the
Honor
Nevada
Society on.
Promise requires? I think it requires 8 or 10 or 12 hours of,
Yeah, I think
right,
it's
Nevada Promise.
8 now.
8?
It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
I'll
but
stop
that would
my
be a
soapbox.
way that we could capitalize on that rather than some of the other
Yeah.
stuff they're doing.
Well, some of the
I have
studies-
teenagers. I have teenagers.
Some of the studies have shown that tutoring does better if it's done during school,
Yeah.
like not on a separate day. So thank you for your ideas.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's great.
CJ, the instructional expense, for example, first row flag view, $271. Is that per session? Was that the total that we've seen so far? Do I multiply that out? So I guess the difference, what I'm looking at is in elementary tutoring, the sum of column G is 2,972. But if that's a per session average, then the sum is 42,756. That's a full teacher without benefits.
So I think that number is based off of all that's everything within that budget code for those 4 months.
For that period. Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
There are certainly some outliers, as you know, as Ariana presented on the, like what happened at Northside. Thank you for that explanation. Sage's 8% could be because we've only offered it 3 times, which is less than half of what everything else did. Every other schools have done, so that may be when we start expanding that back out, we'll see that there are fewer there. And Teresa, I appreciate you bringing up paper app because that was what I had said as well. Do we have any data on how many requests we're getting from paper on non-school days? Is there a way to break that down? Do we see a spike on Fridays or?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to your last question, but I do know that they can break it down. I've seen a recent, I think Candace did a communication recently or paper sent us something, but essentially says, hey, these are the peak hours that we're seeing. This is the day of the week that we see the most. So I can tell you Wednesday was the day of the week that had the most. So it wasn't a Friday or a Saturday. But yeah, there's ways to look at that data to see how much activity is happening on a Friday or a Saturday or something. Okay.
It's Wednesday because everything's due Thursday, right?
Right. Probably. Yeah, probably.
I have lots of kids in school. That's how that works.
And the time of day that the most use is 8 to 9 and 1 to 2.
And 1 to 2.
So
yeah, it's
I'm not sure paper is.
during school and
So
yeah.
that was my question earlier is the only time my kids have ever used paper is when they were assigned to use paper by their teacher. And so that's my question too, is how many times are students actually logging onto paper and using it versus being told, here's this assignment, and when you're done, I want you to log on to paper and use it in this way. Like, is it a choice or is it an assignment?
Yeah, great question. I'm sure it's a nice combination of both. And what I would say is part of the intention of having paper was, in fact, I've done a lot of promoting it to be used during the school day more. Part of the issue is when you're understaffed and you are trying to differentiate and you don't have, I've got non-readers sitting there and kids that are in 2nd grade reading on a 6th grade reading level. And I need to spread myself across all of that. Sometimes teachers will utilize paper in that way as here's an assignment, you're going to get help from this person. In this way, it acts as like as a tutor, only it's someone on a screen as opposed to in person for at least a bit while they work with one group and go to another. And so it was intentional that it would be used during the school day. So that doesn't surprise me that it's.
And then I also have another question about the paper. How long has the school district been paying for it, or how long has it been in use?
A little over a year.
Okay, because I myself, if I'm going to be completely honest, have never even heard of paper till I just Googled it. And so do we think that paper would be more beneficial if per se it was like, how do I phrase this? Like presented to the teachers better and like presented as a tool better for the teachers to show us? Like, do you think?
Ariana, I wish I could show you the 75 emails our teachers have had professional development on it. Every single one of your teachers knows about paper.
Okay.
I promise you, all of your teachers know about paper. We've sent emails to your parents. I think you've probably got one in your inbox at some point, and deleted it like my son did when he got it. We've been advertising a lot on social media. I'm not saying we're not going to keep doing it. We got to do more. We got to get it used. But it's, yeah. To your last question, all of your teachers know about paper.
Okay, thank you
Yeah.
for the clarification.
Elko High School was one of the top 7 schools using it. They have like 695 usages so far this year. So maybe you haven't used it because you don't need to.
You don't need it. Yep.
Yeah.
Take it as a compliment.
But it is being utilized at Elko High School.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to steer us back because although paper is relevant to the discussion, it was not specifically one of the items that was mentioned in the superintendent's advisory committee. So let's, I think we could have a discussion about paper at a later date with a little more data perhaps, but let's look back at item 2.4 and do we have any more questions or discussion on that item?
I'm just looking at this and going off of our student board members' comment about Northside. So, and your explanation of smaller schools and having to staff that. Northside has student population of 360. If you compare that to Grammar, which is 333, they each offered 8 tutoring sessions. Their attendance is very similar, 18 at Grammar, 20 at Northside. The average students, 2 at Grammar, 3 at Northside. And then you look at the cost. Grammar, $234, Northside, $734. How is there a $500 difference between the 2 schools that are so similar in size and attendance?
So it could be anywhere from the supplies and programs they planned on using for that purpose. It could also be that Grammar had 1 teacher on hand to work that, and Northside had 3 teachers on hand to work that. And a lot of these schools will send out individual invitations to kids. They'll see where their grades are and say, hey, we'd really love to have you at this. And so if you're let's say a Northside, I'm just making guesses. I don't know what Northside's done, but if you invited, let's say 115 kids, and I told you, hey Brooke, you're going to be the only person there, could be up to 115 kids we've invited. That doesn't make sense. You got to have the staff on hand to do that. And so, could cost more because you have those people there. You can't say, hey, looks like no one's showing up, go home. You've asked someone to work a day for 2 hours or whatever the time frame is, and you're going to pay them for those 2 hours to be there.
And that brings up a point too. I know that from discussions I've heard, when they did invite students, there was better participation. From the reports that I heard is when they actually invited certain students, they did have a better turnout. So that maybe is, I was just trying to wrap my head around why that would be so different.
So just looking at Northside, the first session, they invited 15 students, 1 came, but they had to have 2 teachers there from 8 to 10, because that was the tutoring session. And then the second session, they invited 30 students, but they had the same result. They had 1 show up. So I think that's kind of where you see the discrepancy. The teachers are hired to do tutoring at the HSER rate, where if you have an aide do it, it's at their daily or their hourly rate, which is.
Thanks, Candace.
Thank you.
CJ, regarding, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, I was just getting any other questions?
Regarding the meal service, from an institutional meal preparation standpoint, we only do 1%, maybe, well, 3%, I guess, of what the school district does on a daily basis at the senior center. But we have found ways to control food costs so that we minimize waste. And I don't know if this would be possible with our food partners, but we require people to call in by 9 o'clock to say, yep, I'm coming for lunch, or nope, I'm not. To a degree, we have to guess at our congregate service, but Meals on Wheels, drive-through, et cetera, we require that to be, for them to let us know. And that could be something to save down on the food cost if it's food cost because of waste. Now, if it's food cost because they have to buy a case of burgers and there's 60 in a case and they're only using 20 burgers, well, of course, that's going to be higher. That doesn't necessarily save on the labor. You still have to have people there. But again, if we know that we only need to prepare 100 meals, then they may be able to say, hey, those 3 of you over here, we don't need you to come in today because we're only doing 100 meals and one person can do that. I don't want to dictate operations to the district, let alone our partner. That may be something to drive these costs down. Because on the tutoring cost, we're at $4,700, I think, roughly for this 4-month period, but we're at $10,000 for the food. And the food is what concerns me the most, because we may be able to catch up from a lack of tutoring. You can't catch up from a starving child. I mean, they miss a meal, you miss a meal, that's it, it's gone. So the food is where I'm most concerned. And so I'd like to see if there are ways that we can reduce this, because at this point, I'm looking at, clearly the parents are not, if we're inviting 30 kids and one is showing up, 29 parents or guardians have made that choice of, no, I don't need to do that. That's on the parents. Food is a little bit more, food insecurity is, I think, was a bigger issue for me. So I'd like to see more data on that before we cancel the lunch program.
Well, I'd just like to point out that it might cost people more to drive to the school to get lunch than to just eat at home. And if we've got community partners that can work with those families and are working with those families, I would say, if, looking at these numbers, it was well intentioned, but I do not think it is well utilized. So my opinion is I'd say we scrap all of it. And then if we have families or students that say, boy, I really wish that came back, then we can move forward from there. But that's my thought with these kind of numbers, and where we've got community partners we can work with. And, as Superintendent Ebert said, this weight shouldn't all fall on the schools. These are the community's kids. The community and each family can help in these issues, whether it's with food, tutoring, whatever. The school has made available opportunities and it is not being utilized. So those are my thoughts. Any other thoughts from the board?
I agree with you, Teresa. I don't think this is working. And so however that's going to look, even with the food, like Sage, we don't know, are those people coming from Spring Creek Elementary, since Sage is the focal point. So I think having communities in schools, whoever, we have other entities to go to that can work with them. So they're not, like Matt said, I don't want any kids starving either, but I think we can do something different with that.
So I would agree. I think it's highly inefficient, by default, probably ineffective. Not the instruction, like I'm sure the teachers are fantastic, but when you've only got one student showing up, it's not there. And as far as the food goes, I can attest, we've been doing community service through our office for 9 years. And this was the first year every single drive we've done, we've had at least 2 or 3 competitors with. We have plenty of community service folks out there that are doing wonderful things. I get bombarded in my email a dozen times a week, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking all these agencies asking for money for other programs, it does start to add up. So I don't know that I don't think that we're the primary means for these folks, for these children. And I think that the data shows that too as well. I would be more apt if we had some double digits in there. We're spending a ton of money on hopes that people will show up. So I think there's more efficient ways to do things. I think paper is a great way. You know, if it becomes something we need to do where we do need to schedule something or we can connect them with other agencies, I think that's probably a better route for the food side and for the tutor side. Paper, or I know plenty of teachers, they don't have to, but I know plenty of teachers that have the heart to say, okay, I'm going to help you out here. And so rather than, hey, I'm going to mandate you to show up or volunteer you to show up on Friday for a couple hours, I think that that's a better option, is just to have it be more organic. So,
and I love Ariana's suggestion about, you know, Honor Society diving in and saying, hey, what can we do? How can we help? Because students helping students is fantastic. When we've got these high school kids that are like, hey, I want to go in and help in elementary, I'm going to get some service hours and it's going to be, I'm going to help this child learn math or learn to read. I think that's amazing.
can I add one more thing too? Something I said when we did the 4-day was that people will work within the time they're allotted. That is just how life works. And so we've seen that in the 4-day. And I think that if we continue to go down that path of the 4-day and we get rid of these programs that are way underutilized, I think that people will work within that, and that works to that effect of tutoring and having some of the high school kids come in and they'll help out. That gives them volunteer time. That gives them time in front of it. That gives the kids in elementary time to say, oh, look, I can do this stuff up in high school. It kind of gives them a path that does all the things that we want without wasting everybody's time and resources too as well. And then have a program where we can send some of these students if we find out that they need food or whatever. So.
Well, if there's no other discussion, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd actually like to table this item. And here's why. The item indicates the Superintendent's Advisory Committee recommendations. There were 6. We've talked about 2. And so the way that this is phrased as an item, as an agenda item, I'm not sure that it's very clear of, yep, we're going to end tutoring and meal service today, especially since we didn't get the data. If I think this was the item, we didn't get the data until 4:30 as the board. So we haven't talked about regular professional development today. We haven't talked about maintaining the work hours for those that need it, for particularly those service, it wasn't service, I apologize, the non-professional classifications. We haven't talked about the student contact, and we haven't talked about the availability of the block schedule. We know that some of this has already been coming up in other areas, but this item talked about the superintendent recommendations or the advisory committee recommendations, which were 6 of them. And I think we should table this to specifically say at a board meeting, we are looking to eliminate tutoring and eliminate food. I would be happy to say, let's pause perhaps, at least on the tutoring side of things. But if we say, yep, let's cancel it, we need to at least give some leeway for those or some advance notice for those that may be planning on lunch tomorrow or this Friday, some kind of meal, to be able to give them other alternatives, just to throw that out there. That is, you know, I'm just going to, so I move to table this item.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to table this item. Is there any discussion?
To clarify, bring this up at the next meeting. We should not table this indefinitely, but at our next meeting, we should have a discussion of which direction we're going. That gives at least 2 weeks notice for the community to come back and say, here's why I'm in favor or against, if they so need.
I will say that the agenda item does say of services recommended by the Superintendent's Academy and Superintendent's Advisory Committee, and none of the other 4 things are services. Those are all parts of operation. These were the only 2 services we would be providing. So that is why it is worded that way. But I don't reject the notion that it's fine to give people a couple weeks to, in this case, a few weeks. Our next board meeting is in for 3 weeks to give their opinions on the situation.
This is one point, Matt, where I will disagree with you. And I think this is a time where we've got data in front of us. And if we want to say we want to continue, discontinue the tutoring and the lunch as of said date, then, like you say, if someone's one of these, a few of these students are planning on lunch on Friday, or some teachers have already been lined out to do an enrichment this Friday, then, you know, we can go ahead with that. But these numbers do not indicate that this is a useful way to utilize taxpayer money for our schools. So I would say, I don't think we need extra time, but maybe perhaps we could give a little extra time in the motion to end these services at a particular date.
Are they
That would be
having
my thought.
services Friday since that's a professional development day?
I would not consider, oh, wait, sorry, are you asking if that's going
this
to
Friday.
happen this Friday?
Yeah.
No.
So
Yes, our staff
before
will
we
be-
do close out on this, I do just want to make sure I'm not the only one seeing that there could be a potential flaw in the meal service data portion. It says that we've served 855 meals, 77 on average per week, and that we've spent $6,094. So where they got the $7.12 per meal for food costs is by dividing the 77 or the 855 meals total by the $6,000 spent total. That's where that $7 comes from. Although they're saying that it's $7.12 per meal for food costs, and we're looking at it as if each meal that was consumed was $12.03. But we also have to take into account that all of that money, the $6,000, also was food that had been thrown away or been discarded because it hadn't been utilized. So instead of completely getting rid of this, do we think it could potentially be more beneficial to look at on average about how much is actually being utilized and plan more around how much is actually being utilized than what we think could be utilized? That way, it still would potentially be more money than nothing, of course, if we didn't offer it, but then we can guarantee a lesser amount than the $12.03 per meal. But then we also are guaranteeing that there's no food insecurity within our community. And I understand where you guys are saying that it isn't necessarily the school board's like issue with that, and like that is something that communities in school could be put under, but could that be a solution for now until we got a more permanent solution with communities in schools? Rather than completely discarding the entire meal service, could we look at what's actually being used and plan more around that than just what was currently being planned for?
Yeah, thank you, Ariana, for your comments. We do not have a crystal ball and cannot predict exactly the number of people coming. Mr. McCarty made a suggestion to, and I know I'm going to say this tongue in cheek, but poll 4,000 people every week to find out who's coming to get food, which I say it that way because in my mind, it's a crazy ask personally. But were we to do that and we would get some sort of figure, let's say we know that Spring Creek out of 3,900 or whatever, this many are coming. We would still need to plan for a little more than that to make sure that nobody comes and doesn't have food. And then I would say, even if all the food was free, based on the numbers that are coming, we are still spending 4 to 5 times the amount that we normally would on a meal just on labor alone. So it could reduce it by potentially half the cost of what we're doing right now, but we would still be paying probably 5 to, my guess is 6 times. Even if we like generously or like very conservatively predicted the numbers, I think we're still finding ourselves at a place where we're spending 5 to 6 times the amount we would normally spend on a meal.
Right. And I completely understand where we would be spending that 5 to 6 times, but do we think that spending that just temporarily is better than having the kids at our schools going hungry on these Fridays and over the weekends until we can get something more permanent, like what was brought up with CIS and a few other opportunities like that? Do we think this could be something temporarily? It does reduce the cost. And while there is still a cost, it also comes with the fact that no kids in the community would be going hungry.
So I think that you're thinking that there is a need, and what we're seeing in the data is that there's not.
Well,
The data all points to it just decreasing. I would argue that when you've got, we don't have them up anymore, when you have single digit percentages and thousands of, I think that shows a need or not a need in those directions. Those are not numbers that show, hey, we have a high demand here. It shows we have this here and you know what? I'm not doing anything this Friday. I think I'm gonna go get some food at the school. So I don't know that you're implying that it's a need of children there, that they have to have that food there. The data is implying, just based on, and I am taking liberty here, but as somebody that looks at data regularly, who owns their own business, who looks at numbers, this data shows that people show up for food because it's there, or they are there, such as the basketball team, or, hey, I brought my kid along so that they weren't at home while I'm tutoring, and so we're going to give him food too as well. That's what the data implies, as opposed to, I need food here. Because in my opinion, we would see higher numbers in this, potentially in the double digits or higher. So we're talking 10% plus, rather than where we see 0% to 4% utilizing it, which is very, very small. Now, are some of those kids that need? That's yet maybe, but that's very low. So we're talking about numbers within numbers within numbers as far as what we're looking at, as opposed to, these are all kids who will go hungry without this food.
Right.
So I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying I disagree in the way the numbers are, because I think that isn't to say that we need to stop right now per se. We'll see what the board wants to do. But that is to say that this doesn't look like a program that needs to be sticking around much longer. So I appreciate what your comments in there, but
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Right. Go ahead, Matt.
So another quick thing, I guess 2 quick things. First, the highest percentage of student lunch or student enrichment, lunch enrichment, is West Wendover, Waihe, and Jackpot, which may also have the least amount of access to other services. So one thing to consider, but then additionally, and Candace, I'm throwing you on the spot here. If we canceled this January 31st, we know that we're not having it this Friday. Would that mean that next Friday is the only other opportunity that would have this lunch and tutoring? Have we already scheduled those out? And I guess the question, another way of phrasing that would be, do these 7 sites schedule it every Friday?
there would be there would be one Friday in January, and then the next Friday is the 2nd of February.
Right.
So
we'd only be looking at one more time.
Yeah, we have January 26th, that would be a Friday. And then we also have February 2nd and February 9th.
Yeah, there's 3.
West Wendover Elementary is a Century 21 school. So they get additional funding for tutoring. So those kids that are showing up in their numbers, those aren't kids from the community. Those are kids going to tutoring at the school, and then the teachers taking the kids to lunch as part of the Century 21 program.
So if we canceled this, what would that jeopardize Century 21 funding? Okay. So if we ended this on January 31st, then we'd have one more lunch session and one more potential tutoring session, because it's okay. Okay.
Prior to us going, I'm so sorry. Can you go?
Go ahead, Brooke.
I've said a lot. Go ahead.
I know Communities in Schools has, prior to us even going to the 4-day week, sent home food bags for kids. But I know that Communities in Schools is not in all of our schools. Schools have to partner with them. And so what's happening with kids in schools that have food insecurity, that Communities in Schools don't come into their schools?
So when I was a principal at Grammar, Community in Schools wasn't present yet. But what we had is a rep that would come over and bring food bags over to our school for those kids. Then I would think if there was a need at a school, they would contact Communities in Schools, or the counselor would contact Cassie Stocky here at the Family Resource Center, hook those families up with food bags, resources, and other entities.
Okay.
Any other questions?
My question was, prior to us doing the 4-day, the way we did it, was anyone else that was already doing 4-day, doing a Friday tutor/food session?
So not the food, not the lunch with enrichments, but I know when I was the principal in Wells, we were already operating on 4-day, and we were trying to do Friday tutoring. And a little before I was done there, we'd already discontinued it because it was the same thing. This was money coming out of our school budget to pay for tutoring, and we would invite, I don't know, 45 kids, mixture of kids that needed to be eligible, kids that just weren't passing. And we'd usually get in the neighborhood of 2 to 5. And so.
Well, it says it's 0, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's because they.
No, I'm saying there. I'm saying,
right.
yeah, the trend continues. Yeah, the
ago.
trend
Yeah.
continues, so.
Yeah.
They're done now.
Yep.
Maybe this would give the community an opportunity to develop some kind of their own, hey, come here and you can have food and some tutoring that isn't involved with the school. So that may leave that opportunity open. And then people show up, great. If they don't, fine too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of other opportunities, I think.
Right.
Madam
Thank
Chair, I
you.
withdraw my motion.
Okay, thank you. Do we have, how would the board like to proceed on this?
Madam Chair, I'll throw it out another motion then. I move to cancel the tutoring and lunch with enrichment programs effective January 31st, 2024.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Don't we don't we need a specific to this? There's nothing specific. It just says tutoring, and just saying, shouldn't we be a little more specific than just canceling tutoring and food for everybody?
So
I'm
Specific
asking.
to this.
Asking for a friend.
So then let's try this. I recommend that we cancel the services recommended by the Superintendent's Advisory Committee at the time of implementation of the 4-day school week, following the follow-up evaluation, which has determined the effectiveness of such said services. Not what this board is looking for.
All right. So whoever seconded that, all right, with that change of the motion.
Okay with that?
Cassie, we're sorry about that motion. All right. Okay, any other discussion?
I thought the first one was fine, but I'll second the second one also.
All right. Okay, seeing no other discussion, we will vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Chair votes aye, and as of January 31st, the services recommended by the Superintendent's Advisory Committee to include Friday tutoring and lunch enrichment will be canceled.
I will also report back later on the other 4 recommendations and how things are going there, because we have some thoughts on those, but
And you
not
got
services.
until December of 2024.
Okay, I'll do it before that.
But before that would be great. All right, we'll move on to item 2.5, receipt, review, and discussion of proposed new policy JDCI, student discipline, discretionary discipline, restraint, and seclusion. This is a non-action item.
Yes, non-action item because it is a first reading. This is a proposed new policy. And as the background information says, state law requires our districts to adopt such a policy to limit use of restraint and seclusion for students with students with disabilities. So this is a policy that was developed. Mr. Higbee, our special services director, along with our legal counsel who specializes in special ed law.
Any questions on this one?
I'll try to keep this through. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. We need to like.
You're doing great.
I read through it, and a lot of this policy just is word for word what is in NRS. But there are a few things that I think I would like to see changed in it. One is, do we need to include in the title? This just says discretionary discipline, restraint, and seclusion. Do we need to add that it's for individuals with disabilities in the title so that when people are looking through that,
Just, if you just want to make recommendations, I can write
I
them down.
recommend
All
that
right.
we do that.
Okay.
And then, let's see. Under physical restraint. And it's in number 3, it says that if physical restraint is used on a pupil with a disability in an emergency, the use of the procedure must be reported to the pupil's cumulative record and a confidential file maintained for the pupil no later than 1 working day after the procedure is used. A copy of that report must be provided to the Director of Special Services, the pupil's IEP team, and the parent or guardian of the pupil. So that is the record, I guess the report about everything, but I'm just thinking of it as a mom of a kid with learning disabilities. And I was just thinking, if I was a parent of a child that physical restraint was used on, finding out or like receiving a report of it within 1 business day to me isn't soon enough. If something like that happened with my child at school, I think that the parent needs to be notified immediately, because for several reasons. If the kid is doesn't really understand why that happened or what happened, that could cause all sorts of mental and emotional issues for that child, where then you're sending them back to school the next day to this environment that maybe they have some fear or anxiety about. That would be something that if something like that happened with my child, I would want to know that same day so that I could have a conversation with my kid and say, this is, what I was told happened at school, and this is why this happened. And do you understand? And to make sure that they can process that information and those feelings and things like that before you just send them back to school the next day with fear or anxiety of, what if that happens to me again? And I'm not even sure, why that happened, because we're talking about people with disabilities here.
I will say that item is specifically referring to the actual written report that gets sent out.
Right. But I think
Contact would be,
included in it.
that's part of our discipline procedures, because in a situation where a child is restrained, that would go under our discipline, and there would be a phone call made home about that. But I can talk with them about including something about require notification same day.
I think somewhere in here it needs to talk about required notification and a timeline on that. The only other thing I think I have is that it defines restraint and physical restraint, but this is on restraint and seclusion. It doesn't really define seclusion, what that is, what's allowed, what's not allowed, when and why, and all that kind of stuff. I think there needs to be more information on what seclusion is and when it's okay, when it's not okay, what that consists of, what that looks like. Just more information on seclusion in here.
Where does it put it? What page are you on? What page are you on? That's all. I'm just trying to follow.
There is no page.
Yeah,
It doesn't talk about it at all.
The title references seclusion, and then,
okay. I was having a hard time following. So okay, so
the first paragraphs it references seclusion, but there's never a definition of what seclusion is. So
It defines restraint, physical
Yep.
restraint, and I think it just needs to do the same thing for seclusion. The other thing is, I'm trying to see like what page I'm on here. My printer didn't print page numbers, so I'll just have to tell you what it's under. Okay, yeah. So under mechanical restraint.
Which is on page 3.
Okay, yeah.
That's where that starts, unless you go to the next page on mechanical restraint.
Yep, mechanical restraint. So it talks about, okay, so a member of the staff of the school continuously monitors the pupil during the time that mechanical restraint is used on the pupil, and the mechanical restraint is used only for a period that is necessary to contain the behavior of the pupil so that the pupil is no longer an immediate threat of causing physical injury to himself or herself. So is there like an overall time limit that we should list in there? Because can a child be
That's the top of
restrained,
page 4.
mechanically restrained for a certain amount of time? There, it does state that.
No. I was just letting the rest of the board know you were at the
4.
top. You're at the top
Oh.
of page 4.
Yes, sorry, H and I. And so I kind of feel like there should be an overall time limit that can be
I'm just gonna,
used.
I'll write the note down, but I'm gonna disagree with you because it can be different for everybody.
Every kid's different.
F does say, letter F says a member of the staff lessens or discontinues restraint every 15 minutes to determine whether the pupil will stop injury to himself or herself without the use. So every 15 minutes, we're giving it a shot to see if this kid is ready to go, calm down, able to be. So if that episode is lasting an hour and 15, it lasts an hour and 15. If it lasts 15 minutes, it's 15. It's probably less than that sometimes.
So what if it lasts 3 hours? At what point do the parents get called and say, we
We leave that to the
Done
professionals who are
XYZ.
trained in this to.
Yeah, we
to
either
make
trust
that
them or we
judgment call.
don't. Like,
They're all
we either
certified,
trust them or we
trained,
don't, again.
They make those decisions. And reevaluating every 15 minutes at most.
Every student's gonna be different. We get to that point. This is to de-escalate the situation. Contact the parents by every administrator happens as soon as possible on the day of. That's standard protocol. The reason this law was implemented was so that there was a time that we have to report that, have that clearance to the IEP committee myself, so that I can do an internal investigation to make sure that everything was followed, all policies followed correctly, and that the situation was handled. Moving forward, we're gonna see cameras in the classroom. And that's gonna enable us to do even a better job of monitoring situations in which the student's safety is primary. That's our major concern, is the student's safety, and whether that's 2 minutes and that student is ready to be okay, or however long that takes. We want that student to be safe and the safety of others, including staff and other students. So
I'd also say it's highly unusual. Like if something like that's going on for any extended amount of time, you're already making contact, you're with parents, you're trying to sort that out. It would be highly unusual for I'll say I've never been involved in a mechanical restraint before. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but a mechanical restraint. But I've been involved in physical restraints before. And if that takes longer than, if a kid's not calming down after about 5-10 minutes, I mean, you're on the horn with the parents. You're really trying to figure out a solution for that. So like, I'm sure you're picturing this horror story of a kid being tied down for 3 hours at a time. Like the likelihood of that is so minuscule. It's almost unfathomable to me, given how we operate in our schools in practice.
And if that happens, there's a process that we go through to make sure that doesn't happen again. We have to do training of staff.
Yeah.
And if it's multiple times that something's happened, we have to go through to make sure that this isn't a staff issue. That we're dealing with, or an individual we're dealing with. So, process that this will take us through.
Okay, the only other thing that I noticed is, like I said, this was a lot of it word for word out of NRS, but it does say, I'm trying to think of where I read it. I've got screenshots of everything on here. It talks about how that report, that every time in NRS, it talks about every time this restraint is used, that the report also comes to the board or to a designee. And so that's what I was wondering with the board.
It used to come to the board and that was changed to go to the designee, which is our special services director.
Okay.
Yep.
Because there were some privacy concerns we had about that at a board level. So that change has happened since I've been on the board.
Okay.
Fairly recent. Ish.
There's a form that's sent to me every time staff lay hands on kids. That comes to me. We have to investigate that. And then if multiple times, I have to report that to the State Department of Education. I have to let them know that this is the number of times we've reached this. This is what we've done to make sure that this isn't happening. And so again, with the designee, that's my job to make sure that that reporting is done to the state as well.
Okay.
All right.
That's kind of all the thoughts and notes that I had on it.
Thanks, Brooke. Anyone else have any questions or recommendations on this item?
I did just have one question. So I believe it's on page 2, at least it's on page 2 on my copy, where it says the district will utilize physical restraint pursuant to the following guidelines. On 1C, it says the use of force in the application of physical restraint does not exceed the force that is reasonable and necessary under the circumstances precipitating the use of physical restraint. In this case, who is the one that gets to determine what is reasonable and what is necessary in the case of putting force on the child?
Dr. Higbee, the gentleman who's talking back there. So as he mentioned, anytime one of these is turned in, he does an investigation into what was done, and it'll be, it's hard to, yeah, it's not an easy spot to be in to determine. But you use, we gather statements from other staff that were there, potentially other kids, depending on the scenario. You know, it's tough to know how hard someone's holding someone else or how restrictive someone's being. But in those situations, most of the time, there's multiple staff members that are all there. They've been trained in proper, it's called CPI, which is an official protocol for restraining students and how to do it safely. And so it would be up to Dr. Higbee to determine if that was appropriately carried out or not.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification.
Hey, can I piggyback on that real quick? Just for future reference for anything, any career field you're in, your reasonable and necessary will always be determined by your career field. The majority of that will actually be academically. So depending on what you're doing, in my case, chiropractic schools, and what is considered reasonable and necessary in how we treat a patient. Same thing with medical doctors, osteopaths, same thing with any practitioner. It would be deemed by most higher education as well as regulatory agencies. So when you see that, it usually is determined somewhere else. But in this case, in this policy, as we've seen, most of this is determined to the career field that we have to as well. So just for future reference, but great question.
CJ, very briefly, this is a new policy. I tried to do a quick search for policy of restraint. I'm certain that I have read much of this language elsewhere, and I know I like NRS, but I've not read every NRS. So do we have another policy that deals with this? As you mentioned, student discipline.
Oh yeah, we looked around quite a bit to see if, because Brooke actually posed the question to me earlier today. Do we have a policy that governs all physical restraint? And the answer is we don't currently have a policy. However, the practice that we have, pretty much, like, I didn't quote it word for word, and I didn't even learn it in Nevada. I learned it when I was an educator in Texas. And basically the guiding principles, if they're a harm to themselves or others, you are justified in the exercise of force to restrain. And so what we have done in our situation is our staff know that. And anytime someone does engage in that, we do a similar process. It's not an official NRS required process, but we review the situation. In fact, Mr. Streeter here had a situation last year at his previous school, and we reviewed that, and we make sure to train that person in CPI following the event, just to make sure they're aware of how to do it in the future. And we try to make sure we cover our bases there, but there isn't a specific policy about it.
I just didn't know where I would
certain
have read
language
it.
contained within like our discipline documents, but there's not a specific policy governing its board practice.
I just wanted to keep things clean. Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question too. So I think I read in here that only people who've been trained can actually do the physical restraint. Isn't that what it said in the policy somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, so you'd like to. However, I would say that in my education in the field and my experience, if it comes down to you're trained and that kid's about to stab himself with a knife or a fork or something, whether or not you're properly trained is not going to prohibit you from a staff member from restraining that child. In the case of our special education students, we do have people that are specially trained to work with those kids. Those who would require it potentially will almost always have that person with them. But when if such a situation arises, our staff are not required to do it, but they are empowered to do it to protect lives and safety.
And just.
We are going to add a second trainer just so that we're aware of in April,
Yep.
we'll have a second person who will be trained to teach CPI. We try to do it yearly, but recommendation is every other year. Once you are trained, you are certified.
It appears, Brooke, that it's only the mechanical restraint that has the training implementation on there.
And just as a reminder to the board, we are going to have a training with Mr. Higbee and his staff, specifically involving special services. We just haven't calendared that. We talked about doing it in December, but December, as everyone knows, is pretty full. And Mr. Higbee has also invited anyone who would like to go visit classrooms with him when he goes to go and do that. I know I did that in the past with one of our past special services directors, and it's a great opportunity to help you understand some of the major needs we have in Elko County when it comes to special services. So if you have the opportunity, contact Mr. Higbee and go and visit some classrooms with him in different communities, because it will help you understand a lot of why we need these policies. Sometimes we look at things and, Brooke, I can understand you saying, why don't we have a time limit? Well, we want the safety of our children and the other children in a classroom and the staff to be considered as well. And sometimes somebody may calm down in a couple minutes, and sometimes it takes a lot longer. And going and visiting some of those classrooms makes a really big difference in understanding a lot of these issues. All right, any other recommendations on that, on policy JDCI before we move on?
I have a couple of just things to clarify maybe for me. This is page 3 under the mechanical restraint 1E and F. It says restrained at least 10 minutes per every 60 minutes. And then in F, a member looks every 15 minutes. And that seems awful confusing to me if I'm the person having to do all that, like, oh, it's been 10 minutes, I need to do this, and now it's 15. Like, can that number be the same? Or is that something that needs to be set, or is it just something for me not to worry about?
Probably not to worry about. They're all trained in how to do this. And again, 16th year in education, never seen a mechanical restraint before. It happens, but it's so specialized that it is very specific and people are very properly trained for it. And there's usually, in those types of situations, I've seen videos of it. Dr. Higbee has 3 people in the room kind of thing. Like they're all very well trained on how to do this and know the times and all that.
And then the other one on F, they've talked about the person doing this needs to be trained and qualified. So in F, a member of the staff of the school lessens or discontinues the restraint. Does that have to be the same person who's trained and qualified, or can it be just anybody else? I don't know if that needs to be clarified in this policy or not.
When we get to the point where we have to use mechanical restraints, staff have to be trained, and that no other staff would be allowed to use a mechanical restraint. Again, Superintendent Anderson is correct. This is extreme. I've never seen can't say that facility that worked. There was AU's mechanical restraint. trained.
Then I'm just suggesting then maybe say the trained member instead of just, because to me it looks like, oh, I can just come up and go, here, let me do this for you. And like I said, maybe it's not that big a deal, but I just want to make sure that people understand not anyone can just come up and go, hey, I'll do that for you. So. And
I
that's
had
all
one
I
other
had.
thing I forgot to mention too. So when I was looking through and just comparing this with NRS, I noticed it says, report a violation, corrective plan required, appointment of administrator to oversee school under certain circumstances. A school where a violation to inclusive occurs shall report the violation to the Board of Trustees of the school district no later than 24 hours after the violation occurred. It doesn't have anything in here about when anything would ever come to the board. Is there a need for that since it's an NRS? Do we not have to include it in policy? Or is that something that we should include in policy?
Let me call the State Department. Who went through this and reviewed this policy and have an email in which did the checkpoints and said, this has everything in NRS that it needs to have, all the requirements for the State Department. So let me reach out to you.
Okay.
To see if that's a need.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, anything else before we move on? All right, seeing none, we will see this policy come back again with any changes and recommendations from the board at our next meeting. So we'll move on to item 2.6, receipt of quarterly update report. I know we've got Stephen coming up.
Good evening, everyone. I've got an update for you guys. I didn't post anything to the agenda just because we've got projects that are at the very beginning stages and ending, but jackpot fire alarm. We've got the inspection finished from the state fire marshal and we passed. There's a little bit of demo work that still needs to happen, and that'll be when class is not in session. It's a little bit invasive, so we'll just wait for the weekends and potentially summertime. But that project's coming to a close. West Wendover High School fire alarm upgrade. That one's in the same exact position. We passed the inspection. Quantum Electric and Fire Engineering did a great job at both schools. So they're at like the 99.9% completion. Jackpot electric heating upgrades, just as expected. We're having delays with some of the electrical equipment, but it should be here at the end of the month and they can start work. So we're just waiting on some of those items to come in, and like that school specifically for that upgrade, we can do a lot of the preliminary work while school's in session, and then on the weekends we'd be able to tie all that equipment in. Also, Carlin fire alarm upgrade. We've sent off all of our engineering plans that we have for the school. So they're working on design right now, and that's just us preemptively planning for this summertime to go out to bid and hopefully start that project in the summer. So we don't have people on site while school's in session like the other two upgrades that we had. Another one is Elko Junior Senior Building hydronic heating. We've got the engineer, he'll be here this Thursday. We've just got a few more measurements to take, and we'll be able to go out to bid next month on that project. And then I guess lastly, I kind of said it before, but a huge shout out to all the building superintendents and custodians and maintenance workers. We've completed 668 work orders since July. The last time I gave you guys an update, it was based off of when we implemented the new work order program, but within this last quarter, just the maintenance department at central office has completed roughly about 200 work orders. So that's a huge accomplishment, and yeah, they're working really hard. And like I said, the building soups, custodians, they're typically at the school 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, plowing snow, and then they do their weekend checks. So thanks to all those guys.
right, any questions for Stephen? All right, if not, I just have to congratulate Stephen on qualifying for Boston. I know that Stephen works really hard here, but good luck. We
Thank
know
you.
that's pretty awesome accomplishment. Thanks for taking care of our facilities, and we know you run hard in every direction, so just had to throw that in. All right, any other questions or anything on their quarterly reports? All right, thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 3.1, which is our consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the consent agenda is approved. Item 4.1 is a report from our NSBA director.
Well, glad to be back for another year. Just a reminder, I won't go into the upcoming, the newer meetings, the next one being in Virginia City. But I do want to cover the NSBA conference, April 6th through 8th. This will be my final warning. If anybody that wanted to go, I've already booked mine, and I'll be booking airfare on that in the next week. So if anybody was interested in hitting New Orleans with me for that conference, let me know and we can work out if you'd like to travel together. So that's all I have on my NSBA report this week.
All right, thanks, Jeff. All right, item 4.2 is items from board members.
I'll go ahead and just jump right back in. Many of you noticed my no vote on some spending, and I'm going to continue to do that throughout the year until I see our budget to where we have 10% or better ending fund balance. I'm going to be a no on everything. I really think that the rest of you should consider the same thing, even though I know things are budgeted for. We need to tighten up. That was a really close call. We almost ended up in corrective action. And it was just through some accounting that we were able to slip out of that. We need to look at every decision just as hard. We just spent a half an hour talking about $10,000 for food, but we sent $200,000 in trucks without a second thought. And I understand that we need those things, but I think that we could also devote discussion to alternatives through maybe interagency agreements to help with snow plowing, or with even hiring outside, or just other alternative ways to save money. This is a big part of our job and what our duty is to the people. We're stewards for this money. So again, it's nothing against anyone, but as these financial proposals are coming through, you're going to see a no vote on me every time until I see a budget that's got us 10% or better ending fund balance. That's all I had.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other items from board members?
Speaking of money, at our conference, there was a session on balanced governance that several of us attended. And if all of you are for it, I would like to just follow through with the gentleman that presented that, just out of curiosity of getting his opinion of what he could do to help us out. And I would be asking Cassie, just because that would take some funding, but I would like to look into, is there a grant available or something to do that? And just, I would like to know how much it would be. It's just a curiosity thing. So I'd like to follow through with that. And Jeff, on your note of you'd like us all to do that, I don't want to tie myself down to always saying no, because I like to take each thing one at a time. So, but thank you.
All right, thanks, Susan. Any other items from board members?
I just wanted to say I'm probably going to steal some of his thunder, but I tagged along for the whole day with the superintendent. Both superintendents, yeah, Superintendent Anderson and Ebert. And I just want to say that there are amazing things happening in our district. We have amazing students, we have amazing staff. To be able to sit in and watch the students, the band and the choraleers and the Dust Devil storm and dust storm and everything that happened. There's just so many wonderful things going on in our district. And then to sit in and hear what staff are doing at each of these schools and the different programs and things that they have to try and be better teachers and to make the environment at their schools better. I just think if people could have seen the things that I saw that day, I feel like people's perception and the way they talk about public education in our community would be a lot different. So I just want to thank everyone in the school district, all the staff for the wonderful job that they're doing, and just say, great job. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Brooke. And with that, we'll move on to item 5.1, which is our superintendent's report.
I'm going to ask the indulgence for just a minute.
Well,
I
you
was
gotta
honored to
speak up.
attend the BBYCA graduation. Thank you again for what you're doing with the cadets out there. I also was able to attend just a very small amount with Superintendent Ebert. And again, I'd like to echo what Brooke had said. At, I think, no fewer than 2, maybe 3 occasions, Superintendent Ebert had said, nobody else is doing that statewide, and ECSD should share that because that could be a best practice. So I was really happy to see that. And then formally, I would like to see policy BCA put onto an agenda, or at least see if legal has a reason that this has to be annual, and can we, under NRS, are we allowed to change that to a biannual appointment, providing, of course, all of the fun stuff that goes around with it. BCA, by the way, is the organization that we did this evening to perhaps look into, can positions be held for more than 1 year without voting? Thank you.
Second that.
Sorry. At first I thought you were saying to increase the frequency with which you review it. You're saying, can we just, do we have to reevaluate every year? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Yes. Okay. All right. Because earlier you said maybe we could change it up more often than every year.
I didn't.
That is what you said.
Then I apologize. That's not what I was
Okay.
looking at. No, I was looking
I was
at.
picturing you wanting to do this every 6 months. I was like, shoot, man, if you want to, we can, but.
No, I was.
My feet aren't even on the ground.
Right.
Okay. all
I was
right.
looking at
So
giving people the
Do we have
ability
to do it every year, or can we do it less frequently?
Correct.
Got it. All right.
It seems like almost every government agency does it every year, or government board, and I just don't know if that's under NRS or something else. So it would just be nice to be able to keep that.
Yeah. Yep. I'll check into it.
I'm sorry.
All right, carry on. Item 5.1.
5.1. All right, that's me. So yeah, I won't say too much more other than about the state superintendent visit. Then it was awesome. Great day. And 3 days later, I was down in Mesquite for our monthly NAS meeting, and Superintendent Ebert went on and on about, she visited us and then she visited White Pine, and she was effusive in her praise of Elko County and the things she saw, and she let me know personally after the event as well. It was just a great day, and everyone did a great job, including we got Mr. Harold here, whose band welcomed them to Elko High School, and there were so many awesome displays, from general ed classroom to electives to, our kids at Adobe from their leadership team who toured us around the school. They were so impressive. The 2 young men that took us around, the teacher leadership team at Adobe, like it was just everywhere we went, it was greatness, and at all levels. And I really enjoyed it. And it was awesome to just be out in the schools with her and see someone else give nods of approval for the awesome things we're doing. So that was great. Decided I don't want to say that thing. Tomorrow night, and I want to show this to you. I'm not going to take too much time, but just by way of information. So tomorrow night at 6 p.m. and please feel free to attend if you want, but we're the county commission's appointed committee, which is called the Elko County School District Capital Improvement Project Oversight Panel, which is a long name. They're meeting at 6 p.m. That's the panel that Josh was appointed to. Dr. Byers was appointed to, and to review everything having to do with AB 519 as it pertains to capital improvement for our district. So they requested a lot of information from us, and I just want you to be aware, Josh has already received Dr. Byers has already received all this. And so he's got a chance to look at it, but I want you to just, so you're aware of what we're presenting. I'm not going to read through the cover letter, but basically we go into, they wanted to know what sort of needs exist, how, if we give money, how is it going to be utilized? What are the priorities, et cetera, et cetera. They want a lot of info on that. And so thanks to Matthew Stalkey and Stephen Smith for really, and they're not the only ones. Dr. Higbee was part of this. Cassie Stalkey was part of this. Kayla helped us out. Like there's a big group of us work together to really try to boil this down for them. So they're going to see, and we're not going to go through everything item by item, and I can email this to you after, but this is just an FYI. So we got it down to 4 priorities. It's been up on the screen, I think, long enough for you to see what, how we define those priorities. I'll zoom in a little more. And then we went through all of the things by priority. And so in priority number 1, there are 4 schools that are desperately in need of a mechanical upgrade of some sort. And so those are the cost proposals, and that is what we're showing them we have need of. Priority 2 has several projects. Many of them are roof maintenance and or replacement. And so we go through and we've listed off all, I mean, it's a lot of roofs. It's not all of them, but it's a lot of them. And in some cases it is a simple repair. It's a repair. Easy for me to say. I wouldn't know what to do with one shingle, never mind an entire school roof. But roof maintenance is, and really projecting out 5 years of roof maintenance in a schedule. We have, Stephen has talked to us about this before, about the HVAC control systems being outdated and basically non-functional at some of our schools. They're that old if they go out. So those things are listed. We all know about our ongoing fire alarm replacements, E-rate fiber. So those are all listed in priority 2. Those are all things that essentially, if they shut down, our ability to function as a school building would cease and we'd have a major emergency on our hands. Then priority 3 are some pretty important projects that would be a little farther off in the future. And then priority 4, some other things. And then not even listed here are and it's a nice graphic here of those things based on importance and urgency. And then we let them know about what our active projects we are working on right now are. And then about $130 million worth of other projects that sure would be nice to have, but don't even enter into the equation right now with the HVAC, the roofs, the controls for HVAC, all that. So that is what we are showing them. We're demonstrating that need, so we can hopefully get more than a penny, because a penny won't do one of those things, never mind all of those things. And so, it's a big hill to climb. And whether we like it or not, we're at the mercy of someone else being willing to forfeit funds that were saved for us. At this point, we now need them back, and hopefully they are returned in kind as was advertised. So that is the information that's going to be presented. And then we also included our current CIP. I'm not going to go over all that. You guys saw that and approved it back in July, I think. So Stephen and or Matthew, Dr. Higbee, me, Will Adler from the state, or from the, I can't remember the name of do you remember the organization he's with? Silver something or other. He was a big part of the advocacy for the tribe and for helping secure funds for that new school, and really was a big part in authoring that bill. He's going to be there. There's going to be a lot of people there to discuss this, and it's the kickoff of this panel, and to get everybody on the same page of what the needs are, and to really to adequately describe the reality. This, like, none of this is pie in the sky. None of this is hopes and dreams. This is all, please don't continue to withhold money and put any one of our schools in a situation where we have to figure out where to put 350 kids because we don't find a mechanical upgrade worthy of our money. It's not a board from 5 years ago that's going to suffer. It's today's kids, and that's a decision for them to make. So that is what we're going to present to them, and answer any questions they have. And we've given them a bunch of other ancillary documents, but that's kind of the primary, just overview of what we got going on as a district from a capital improvement standpoint. So that's tomorrow, 6 p.m. down where they hold their commission meetings. And you're certainly welcome to come be present if you'd like to.
I just want to add at 1:30 at their meeting, they have an agenda item to discuss the validity of AB 519 as well. So wonderful work, guys. I just don't know where that's going to be. Obviously, that's illegal. And whether they move forward or not, that's obviously their discussion. But the gist of the agenda item is the validity and constitutionality of AB 519, specifically with the tax, the funds, and the mandatory releasing to us. So anyways, just want to make sure that was on there too and that people know. So I would encourage you to listen in at 1:30. It's probably halfway down the agenda, I think. So I will not be able to, but would appreciate updates.
Thank you for mentioning that, Dr. Byers. Next, I want to make sure people are aware of, and we're really going to start promoting it again. I mean, we have been promoting it, but we're going to really hit it hard here the next week. Is a week from tonight at 6 p.m. is our second mental health series seminar. This one is titled Helping Your Child Succeed. And it'll be, I think I said 6 p.m. already. Just like last time, registration is pretty important in order to be able to have access to that. So we'll get after it on social media, and I'll email all staff just like we did before. And we got posters going up all around the place, and really want to make sure we get use out of that. And so we'll have that next Tuesday at 6. I encourage all of you to check it out and to talk to everyone. They don't have to be an Elko County School District, a parent of an Elko County School District kid. Anybody can participate in those. For all of you, next Wednesday, I believe I sent an email. Last I checked, I think President Dastrup was the only one registered, but there is the Nevada Future of Learning meeting that's at 4 p.m. that day. If you were thinking about getting registered for it, please do so. If you need that again, just let me know. I'll send it your way. But that's something that you legislators, local school boards, state board of education, all decision makers about education in Nevada are invited to. It was a really great meeting the first time around. That's why there's a second go around. And it's a lot of the content of which, a month or so ago, I went and presented to the State Board of Education about this very topic, and a lot of that information came from there and is in conjunction with that. So if you were wanting to get registered and attend, please let me know. And then just to keep you updated on SB 231, that's State Bill 231, or Senate Bill, sorry, 231. Had additional monies for salary increases for staff that was available based on what we were doing with our own negotiations. And so we have been approved to present at the upcoming meeting. Our documents are all in a row, and they said they've got everything they need. So we'll be presenting at that soon. It'll actually be February 8th, which I know we have a meeting a couple days before that, but I wanted you to know where we are in that process in case people are, teachers are asking you or whatever, hey, what's going on with 231? So that's on the way. We're doing our very best to make sure our staff is not left out from that opportunity. And then just like this isn't an official vote. I just need a thumb up or thumb down from you guys. We tried something out with you today. That board memo on the pickup truck thing. Is that, I'm talking about? If you like that, thumb up. If you're like, whatever, I don't care, you don't have to show anything, but that's something we stole from another district. I see Jeff likes it, and we'll continue to do for action items in as much as it makes sense to do. And so we'll get those on there for you. The budget piece is nice. The justification, it's a little more comprehensive than, it's been nice having the background info, but it's a little more comprehensive than that, and hopefully answers some more questions. And we'll make sure you guys get those with our upcoming agendas. So
I'd like to add, I've seen a lot of good things headed in the right direction in that regard. regarding transparency and stuff I'd asked about earlier. I want to thank you guys for that. It's been nice.
Of course, yeah, thank you for your suggestions and happy to do it. That's it for me.
All right, any questions for Mr. Anderson? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 6.1, which is approval of the accounts payable.
Move to approve the accounts payable.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, abstentions, or disclosures?
I have to disclose that I have a family member that works for one of these companies, so I'm abstaining from voting.
All right, thank you.
Is someone else gonna go? I'm gonna disclose that I have a family member that works for one of these companies, but I will not be abstaining from voting.
All right, and I will also disclose that I have a family member who works for Wellsboro Electric, but as it covers a lot of our schools in the district and it's not just specific to me or my family member, I will also not be abstaining. All right, any other discussion on the accounts payable?
I should probably be clear that it's Wellsboro Electric for me also.
All right. I am taking it this motion is covering the accounts payable January 16th, 2024, because we have a couple other board member reimbursements. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And with one abstention, chair votes aye and the motion carries. We have two other board member reimbursements to approve.
I move to approve the AP board reimbursement McCarty and the AP board reimbursement Neal.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any abstentions, disclosures, or discussion on those items?
I'll be stating that I'm abstaining from this because I'm one of the two reimbursements.
And I'll be abstaining as well.
All right, thank you. Seeing no other discussion, we shall proceed to vote. All in favor of those reimbursements, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And with two abstentions, the president votes aye and those carry. All right, any other questions on the accounts payable? Looks like we're good. Final opportunity for input from the public is item 7.1. Is there anyone who wishes to make a comment? All right, seeing none, thank you for joining us for our first meeting of 2024, and we look forward to seeing you the rest of the year, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much.
All right.